country. There is nothing that is more wrong. If a diplomat lies, sooner or later, the lies will catch him back. A diplomat has to say the truth. He has to say it politely, of course. He has to consider the right moment to say the truth, but he should never lie. A diplomat who lies is not professional. That's why I chose as a subject the word slova. There was, for during a long time for linguists, the myth of an original language that existed before the various languages, before the Babel Tower that existed. And these linguists have looked for common roots in the thousands and thousands of languages, dead or alive, on the planet. If you look at it closely, you do not find a single word that is common to all the language, or even to some of them. The only thing that is common in the way humans are expressing themselves are the expression of emotions. People laugh always the same way. People cry the same way. They can express fear, pain, hatred, anger. If you walk on somebody's foot in the metro in Tokyo or in New York, in Moscow or in Paris, you will hear the same noise. So why are there so many different languages? Look at the way you learn a language. When you're born, you don't speak. Infants in Latin means the one who does not speak. A baby does not speak. And he learns the language in the context first of the family, with his parents and with his older brothers and sisters, then in the school or when he plays in the street, and then broader in the society. What does it mean? It means that language is conventional. You absorb the language through the contacts you are making from the very beginning of your life with human beings in the place where you happen to have been born and in the place where you grow up. So by absorbing this language, these words, you absorb the human experience of the people who are talking to you and of the people to whom you are listening. So why do we talk? And there are basically two theories. The first is probably the one we instinctively think it's the correct one. It's a very old theory. It starts with Plato, the Greek philosopher, in the dialogue Phèdre. Plato says the word is here to describe. We see the reality, we think the reality, and then we say it. I have here a bottle in front of me. I see this bottle is true, it's there. I think this is a bottle, and I say this is a bottle. So for Plato, the thought is the connecting link between the reality and the world. So we talk to describe what is around us, to describe reality, to describe the world. Now, there are a few problems. First, because there is not a reality around you and you somewhere else. You are part of the reality. We are part of that reality. I see you, I hear you, you can see me and hear me. So you cannot get out of the reality to look at it. You are part of it. The second problem is that the word is not univocal. Words can have many meanings. can be ambiguous, whereas the reality is not univocal. There is a bottle of water. This is clear. It's obvious. Whereas the words are not. And remember, how many times have you probably in your life been in a situation where you say, oh, I don't find the words to express what I see or what I feel, because it's extremely beautiful, because you are very happy or very sad or very angry. So you see the limits of the world compared to all your personal experience of the human life. On the other hand, and this is probably now among linguists the right and the most frequent approach, is the idea that the word does not describe the reality. The word creates reality. That sounds strange, but take the Bible. First, in the Bible you have, in the beginning was the Word. Sначала byla Слово. Why the Word at the beginning? And you know, at the beginning, before everything, God in the Bible says, He says, будет свет. Да, будет свет. Have you asked yourself, why does He say, будет свет? Никто не слышит, никто не слушает. Why does it say? And to whom? Because He is alone. The Bible could say, at the beginning, God wanted. Хотел свет. Или подумал свет. Why does the Bible say, He says? He says there should be light. Of course, the world does not create a new reality. If I say there is an elephant in the room, there will not be an elephant in the room. It's not what I mean. But my words, your words, can have a huge impact on the reality. I give you a few examples. If now somebody in this room screams, fire, пожар, what will happen? Everybody will get up, we will rush out of the room. So this word, пожар, will transform the reality in which we are now. I'm a lawyer. When we chose word to define a situation, it has an impact on the situation. Just one example. There are today many conflicts in the world. Many people are fighting with weapons. Some are called terrorists. Some are not. Some are fighters, irregular fighters, foreign fighters, or whatever. If you are fighting in one of these conflicts, and then you are defined as a terrorist by the United Nations or by a country, usually a powerful country, it will have an immediate impact, especially on the length of your life. The fact that this word has been applied to you, rightly or wrongly, this is not the question. So, of course, there is a world outside the language, outside the word. But when we talk, we give names. Again, remember the Bible. Huh? In the Garden of Eden, God says to Adam, now you will give names to the animals, to the plants, to the trees. When we give names, when we put a word on some element of the reality, we take it for us. It becomes our reality. And every word we say will have an impact, even nice word. If you are saying, I love you to somebody, it will definitely have an impact of the attitude of that person towards you. A good or a bad impact, perhaps, but it will have an impact. So, the words, you have the world, we give names to the reality, and by giving names, by using words, we organize the world. We organize the world, and we can make it understandable for us. And never forget that these words have an impact, can transform the reality. So we understand the world thanks to the words. We talk, we give names, we apply definitions, and by doing that, we are changing the world. Then why do we talk? Herodotus, the Greek historian, said at the first sentence of his history, says, by presenting to the public, he was the first historian we know of. He says, I present to the public the result of my research because I want the actions, the deeds of man not to be forgotten. We know we will die. We know human life is limited. And this historian says, I want things not to be forgotten. That's why I will put it into words. So you see, by using words, we build knowledge. We build knowledge, and this knowledge is available for the people who come after us when we all will be dead. And they will start with this knowledge and go further. This as well transforms the reality. This is the history of the evolution of human science, of human arts, and all the human activities. So the language has as well an extremely important element, which is the tradition. Tradition, which means transmission. So many people lived before us. Without the words, we would know nothing about them. All the experience of these billions of people who lived before us is available to us thanks to the word. And this broad, this very rich human experience is developing over the years and gets richer and richer day by day. Again, thanks to the fact that we are saying words and that we are writing those words. This is why we talk. The second question, which I think is very important, is to whom do we talk? And I think it's very important to remind that we do not talk to ourselves, as maybe if we are crazy, or if we are a mystic, or if we have drunk too much, we might be talking to ourselves. But normally the language is always in the relation between the one who talks, today me, now, and the ones who listen or who are supposed to listen, you in this room and you on the internet. So every word, every act of speaking has to be understood within the relation between the talking one and the listening one, or the listening ones. For the Greek, if you remember, if you are familiar with Aristotle says to talk is an act of friendship, philia. Because you enter into relation with another human being, who has the same human condition as you, and by talking to each other, you establish this relation, you learn to know each other, and no language can be dissociated from this relation. That's why, for instance, saying the same thing to two different persons has a completely different effect. If you say one thing to somebody you do not know, or one thing to somebody you know very well, or the same thing to somebody you like a lot, or to somebody you don't like at all, the same sentence will have a completely different impact on that person because the relation between you is different. So, when you talk, you are always entering into a relation of friendship. I don't mean friendship in the English meaning of the word. I mean the Greek philia. What does it mean? If talking is entering into a relation with other human beings who share the same condition as you, it means two things. You have to be very clear. I hate the expression creative ambiguity. This is wrong. There is no creative ambiguity. Ambiguity is destructive. You have to be precise. Because in view of the endless richness of human experience, what you add to that experience is very important. So when you talk, be very precise. Make sure you are very well understood. And of course, you have to take into account the relation you have with the other person. With some people, it might be more difficult for many reasons. But you have to be precise in order to be truth to the relation of friendship you're supposed to have with the other person. And the second consequence is that you have to speak the truth. Again, look at the Bible. In Isaiah 45, read, if you've read, I quote the Bible because it's the oldest book. And if we want to have an eyesight on human condition, it's usually a good source of information. God says, I did not tell to the people of Jacob, look for me in the chaos. I, Yahweh, God, I speak justly, clearly, and by using straight words. There is as well the same message. When you talk, be clear, be precise, and speak the truth. If you lie, lying is something we probably all did at some point in your life. Why is lying the fourth commandment that has been given to Moses? Why is it so important not to lie? Precisely because of that. Because if the act of talking in the human society is an act of friendship, by lying, you are betraying this friendship. And that's why the fourth commandment, so very important in the first half, is you should never lie. Of course, we all lie. I did it, maybe you did it, for important things or for small things. We lie because we want to protect us, or we lie because we want to protect others. But the human experience that is in the Bible reminds us, be careful. By lying, you are sabotaging the friendship that should be at the ground of every human relation. What does that mean? And that would be my conclusion. It's, as I said, talking is an act of will. Talking is an act of friendship because you always talk to somebody. And when you talk to somebody, it is that somebody that is very important to you when you're talking. You should not lie, because by lying, you are destroying the human relation that should be the ground of the the ground of the act of talking and the basis of human society. Again, when I mean friendship, I don't mean personal, individual friendship. I mean the Greek philia, which is a general attitude you are supposed to have towards all other human beings in society. Third, and then I think especially for the students, you never master your own language enough. Your own language, Russian, French, whatever, is immensely rich, and it has a huge quantity of informations that tells you what it means to be a human and what it means to grow up in a world peopled by full with human beings. So cherish your language. And my third conclusion would be always be precise. And if you don't find the words, try again. And try again until you are really sure that what you've said corresponds as close as possible to what you think and to what you want to say. Being ambiguous not only is a failure of intelligence or an act of intellectual laziness, being ambiguous, like lying, is insulting the person you are talking to. Is not to render justice to the importance of the relation we establish in a society between the human beings who are living in it. So that will be my conclusion. I thank you for your attention, you on the screen and you in this room. And should there be any questions, I would be very glad to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Если какие-то вопросы есть? Конечно, Алексей Александрович.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for your presentation. It's very interesting and philosophic. And my questions are closer to the legal field, because you are not only the diplomat, as you have mentioned, you are as well a lawyer and graduate from Freiburg University and educated in Europe. And a couple of questions regarding language and regarding the current situation. The first question is about the new modern legal language. We are living in a real life, and we know that the language is changing. And we have some new laws, like amendments to the Russian Constitution, and like the new edition of the obligation law in Switzerland, for example, which is entering in force to the 1st of January 21. And my first question is, do you feel as a diplomat and as a lawyer how this affects the new trends, the reality affects the legal language? It's a conservative field. You know, we have constitutions, we have codes, and we are accustomed to a sort of legal vocabulary which is coming to us from the previous centuries. And when we use legal terms and legal expressions, we should understand absolutely clearly what it means. Ambiguity, yes, ambiguity is something. I'm a practicing lawyer. I'm not lying, but I'm trying to use the ambiguity in many cases, many circumstances. So my first question is, do you feel, and can you explain how you feel as a lawyer, what is now the relationship between the language and reality, the cyber new reality, the cyber law, network law, as people say? That's my first question. The second is regarding the epidemic situation. We know as lawyers that in many cases and many circumstances, the law, the rights, human rights, are not only limited but violated also during the quarantine measures, both in Europe and in Russia. I mean, it's a natural situation. What do you think as a lawyer? What is now, what are the lawyers supposed to do? We're going, by the way, in 15 days, we're going to have huge conference of lawyers regarding the quarantine measures and human rights and how human rights have been affected by these quarantine measures and this epidemic period. So that's my second question. Thank you.
I will take the second first because it's the easiest for me. Every political decision is always a balance between different interests. You have to make a choice and you have to weigh various interests. In the case of the pandemic is a perfect case. You have the individual freedom, your right to do whatever you want, to go wherever you want, to talk or to be with whomever you want. And then you have national health and, of course, the risk for the life of the other people living in the society in which you are. So, individual freedoms are not absolute. You cannot have absolute freedom except if you live alone on an island. But even there, freedom does not mean much because you just happen to be alone and you can do whatever you want. So you always have this limitation. The golden rule is it should be proportional. If, to give you an example, if we push it to the absurd, if you want to avoid the spread of a pandemic, it's theoretically very easy. Everybody has to stay alone in his or her room during 3 months, for 3 months. After that, the pandemic would disappear. The problem is that if everybody stays strictly alone in his or her room for 3 months, we all die. So of course there will be no pandemic, but there will be no human beings anymore. So the governments are trying to ponder these two. What is more important? How far can we go? I don't think there is an absolute answer to that. Again, you see the way countries react to the pandemic. There are no two countries that take the same measures at the same moment. And I don't think it means some are right and the others are wrong. First, the decision to weigh these interests is taken in a society where the perception of this interest could be different than in another country. Second, it has a big advantage. It will allow us in 2 years to compare the experience of these countries and say, okay, who did it best? If we compare South Korea and Italy, the United States and Germany, Sweden and Great Britain, Russia and Spain, you see how different it was. So I don't think there is an absolute attitude. What we should have, and I think that's basically what more or less governments do, they know how far they should not go too far. But they have these interests they have to protect. And there are other interests. We know COVID kills people. Yes, this is true. COVID killed 1 million people until now worldwide. But we know as well the measures taken against COVID, they kill people too. The problem is that these people who are killed by the measures, they are not accounted for. Mostly they live in developing countries. For instance, because the supply chain is broken, they do not get medications. Or they lose their jobs because of the drop in economic activity. And if you lose your job in some countries, it means you go straight into poverty because there is no state to help you in between. Or even worse, you go from poverty into misery. These deaths are not accounted for. And this is the difficulty in which we are. We know in our hospitals, in Russia, in Switzerland, in France, we know who dies of COVID, to whom COVID was the last element that brought up the death of a person. This we can count. But how many people died? Or the children that could not go to school? How many people died in Africa, in South Asia, and so on? This we will never know, but we know there are a lot too. So there again, we have this balance of interest we have to make. The first question, being a lawyer, and you being a lawyer as well, Mr. Clichin, we know how the language is extremely important. Because when the judge qualifies an action, the criminal judge, if he say this was assault, or this was murder, or this was just manslaughter, there will be a huge difference for the person. So we have to be extremely precise, and we have to know what the context, what the concept mean. The language evaluates, as you said, it's true. The language evaluates, so does the society, and so has the law to evaluate as well, because the law has to be keeping up with the society itself. Property. Everybody probably knows what it means, property, to own something. It comes from Roman law. It's the Romans who have invented the notion of property. And it means you can use or destroy something alone. You just decide. And then this evolves through the age. Can you rent it? Can you lend it to someone and to get it back? Where does the property go? So then the concept evaluates according to the needs and to the evolution of society. When international trade started in Europe, in the 13th century, new legal instruments like the letter of credit were invented in order to answer. So we constantly create new concept in order not to lose the contact with the reality. The cyber world makes it particularly difficult because the law is territorial. In Russia, you apply Russian law. In Switzerland, you apply Swiss law. Well, except for US law, who's supposed to be applied everywhere, the majority of the countries restrict the application of their law to their own territory. In the cyber world, where are you? Are you where the server is, but you don't know where is the server? If, for instance, you insult somebody on cyber, where is it committed? Is it committed where the person lives? Is it committed where the server is? Is it committed through the provider, the internet provider? Is it committed where the person who wrote the insult is? And this is one thing, but you can as well retweet an insult and send it to many, many people. And if you send it to many people, does it mean it has been committed in every country where these people are living? So cyber now places us lawyer in front of a very difficult task. I'm sure we will find the answer. Lawyers always find the answers. But because with cyber, we leave the territorial element, which was always the basic of the organization of law, national, territorial. And this definitely is today is a challenge. But I see already some answers being given. For instance, international conventions. By making an international convention as broad as possible, you can evacuate the question of territoriality because you say basically the rules we set, these rules are supposed to be valid everywhere. But this is just a small example. I'm sorry if I did not answer your question as clear as I could.
Thank you very much for your thinkings and your answer. It's very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions, colleagues? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. We are glad to hear your lecture. It was very interesting, and you know, of course, it's very interesting because you speak about linguistic and took a parallel with legal profession, with lawyers. And of course, for us, for lawyers, it's very important to understand that we are maybe a little bit close to the God, because we also use words as a God, and so it's the main part of our profession. Thank you very much. It was, you know, it was very good compare. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.